So, I want you to imagine for a second that you are experiencing this just incredibly profound, universe-altering spiritual revelation.
Right, like the ultimate mountaintop moment.
Exactly. You are pulled into this moment of absolute divine intimacy. You're ascending to a plane of pure, ethereal wisdom, and it's beautiful. And then the very next instruction you get is literally a hyper-specific manual on how to butcher a farm animal.
Yeah, it's quite the transition.
It's completely jarring. This
Yeah.
collision between the transcendent heights of the heavens and the absolute gritty, messy reality of physical dirt and blood. And well, that is exactly where we are starting today's deep dive.
It's a phenomenal whiplash, honestly,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
we have this deeply ingrained assumption in our culture that the higher you go spiritually, the further you have to get from the physical, tangible world.
Right, like monks on a mountain.
Exactly. We view enlightenment as this escape from the mundane. We picture silent mountaintops and, sort of leaving the physical body completely behind.
Which is why today we are going to completely dismantle that expectation for you. We have this incredibly complex, deeply philosophical stack of source material for you listening right now. We're looking at a Hasidic discourse that was delivered in the spring of 1972.
And it is a incredibly dense text.
It really is. It zeroes in on the very beginning of the biblical book of Leviticus, or in Hebrew, Vayikra.
Yeah, and Leviticus is a book that modern readers often really struggle with, precisely because it deals so extensively with the laws of animal sacrifices in the ancient tabernacle.
It's not light reading.
No, not at all. It is a text fundamentally obsessed with physical matter, anatomical procedures, and just raw, visceral reality.
And that kind of sets up the core mission for us today. We are exploring a profound spiritual paradox at the heart of this 1972 discourse. Like, why does the ultimate, transcendent, infinite wisdom of the Torah seem so intensely focused on the hyper-practical, muddy details of the physical world?
It's crucial to establish right out of the gate that this discourse is not treating Leviticus as some ancient history lesson about temple rituals. It is laying out a psychological and spiritual blueprint. I
Yeah.
mean, it's basically a literal physics manual for understanding how the absolute highest spiritual energy is designed to crash directly into our messy, everyday, modern lives.
Yeah, and I really want to look at the exact mechanism of that crash, because to get it, we have to look at the exact wording the text analyzes from the opening of Leviticus. There is this glaring contradiction sitting right there in the very first verse.
The very first word, actually.
Yes, exactly. The book starts with the word Vayikra, which translates to, and he called. Now, the source text stresses that this specific word implies a profound, overwhelming endearment.
Right.
It's a call of deep love, like this intimate whisper from the divine.
The language is incredibly tender there.
But then look at what immediately follows that ethereal call. It transitions instantly into the incredibly physical, noisy, bloody laws of animal sacrifices taking place in the tent of meeting. And the discourse points out another textual anomaly right in that same opening sentence.
The use of the word Adam.
Yes, the verse says, when an Adam brings an offering from the animal, and the text asks, why use the word Adam?
It's a brilliant question because, Hebrew has several different words for a man or a person. Words like ish or enash, which just denote a standard everyday human being.
Just a regular guy.
Right. But the word Adam specifically denotes the absolute highest, most elevated spiritual level a human can possibly achieve. It refers to humanity in its ideal state, created in the divine image.
So why not just say, when a person brings an offering? Why invoke the most spiritually lofty, transcendent term for a human right before handing them a knife to slaughter a physical animal?
It seems completely backward.
It does. I was trying to picture how this actually works, and the best analogy I could come up with is like a visionary master architect, or even a billionaire CEO.
Okay, I like that.
So imagine someone who has just designed a breathtaking mile-high skyscraper. They have this massive, brilliant 10,000-foot view of the project. But instead of staying up in their pristine, air-conditioned studio, this master architect is down in the mud, personally pouring the concrete and aligning the very lowest foundational bricks.
That analogy actually touches on the core mechanism the discourse reveals. To explain why the architect is down in the mud, the text brings in two towering, distinct works of Jewish mysticism.
The Zohar and the Midrash.
Exactly. And it points out that these two texts offer seemingly contradictory models of our relationship with the divine. So the Zohar focuses on a concept called orot, which translates to lights.
Lights. Okay.
And this represents an absolute, essential interconnection to the divine. It's a total fusion, According to the Zohar, when we operate as the atom, our souls are fundamentally boundless light, completely inseparable from the Creator.
Wait, hold on. Because I'm looking at the notes on the Midrash, and it offers a completely different model.
It does.
The Midrash explains our connection to the physical world, using the concept of kelim, or vessels. And it uses the metaphor of a belt tied tightly around a person's waist.
Right, the belt.
You're giving me two entirely different physical properties here. A fusion of boundless light versus a restrictive leather belt tied around a waist. Like, how am I supposed to hold both of those contradictory ideas at the same time?
Well, that tension is exactly what the discourse is trying to resolve.
Yeah.
Think about the nature of a belt. A belt is closely attached to you. It serves a vital function. It holds everything together.
Yeah.
But it is fundamentally not you. It is a separate, finite entity that has been bound to you. The physical world, our everyday reality, and all the mundane actions we do, like the animal sacrifices in the ancient temple, or even just cooking dinner today, those are the kilim, the vessels.
They're the belt.
Exactly. They are the belt. The text argues that the entire physical universe is sustained by humanity's actions down here, by elevating that mundane physical matter.
Okay, so the physical world needs to be sustained, but it can only handle structured, limited energy. The vessels.
Precisely. The physical action alone, the vessel, is just dead weight without an energy source. The power to actually elevate that mundane physical reality, the power to make the belt hold everything together, can only be generated by someone operating at that infinite frequency of the atom.
Okay.
You need the boundless power of the orot, the lights, to properly assemble and elevate the restrictive kilim, the vessels.
Right, so returning to the architect analogy, the master architect is the only person with the infinite vision required to know exactly how that lowest foundational brick has to be laid.
Exactly.
Because it eventually has to support the weight of the entire skyscraper. So the physical brick is the target, but the highest spiritual connection is the vision required to place it perfectly. You just can't elevate the animal without the power of the atom.
The lowest physical action absolutely demands the highest spiritual consciousness.
Okay, but if the ultimate goal of the visionary architect is just to get their hands dirty dealing with the physical bricks, I really need to understand the underlying logic of this system.
The why of it all.
Yeah, why did the divine set it up this way in the first place? Like, if the goal is spiritual connection, why not just leave heaven in heaven? Let the spiritual beings do spiritual things and let the physical world just be physical.
So, to answer the why behind the system, the discourse brings in a foundational metaphor from another classic Hasidic text called the Tanya, and it compares the ultimate infinite wisdom of the Torah to water.
And I have to push back heavily on this, to be honest. When I read that in the sources, it stopped me in my tracks.
Because of the direction it flows.
Yes. Spiritual enlightenment is universally described as ascending, right? It's fire, it's smoke, it's climbing a mountain, it's transcending your physical body. Comparing infinite spiritual wisdom to water feels entirely backwards. Water literally just falls to the ground and puddles in the dirt at the lowest possible point.
What's fascinating here is how the discourse basically forces us to unlearn our preconceived physics of spirituality. It introduces a core Hasidic concept called dira betachtanim.
Dira betachtanim.
Yeah, which translates to the ultimate divine desire to have a dwelling place in the lower realms.
Meaning the goal was never the mountaintop.
Never. The text points out a profound truth about the intrinsic nature of water. Water doesn't just accidentally fall. Its very nature is to actively leave a high place and aggressively seek out the lowest possible point.
Right, gravity just pulls it down.
It flows into the deepest valleys, it seeps into the lowest crevices in the dirt. The text is arguing that the true, intended home of infinite divine wisdom isn't actually up in the lofty heavens. The heavens are just the source.
Wow.
The intended destination is down here, in the lowest, most dense, most physical aspects of our world.
So the spiritual light is actively hunting for the physical reality.
It is seeking it out, just like water seeks the lowest ground. And the discourse actually provides a historical case study to prove this, focusing on the biblical tribe of Issachar.
Oh, right, the scholars.
Exactly. The tribe of Issachar were historically recognized as the greatest scholars. They were the ones with immense, towering, esoteric Torah knowledge. They were the spiritual intellectuals.
And you would assume they'd be entirely detached from the physical world, just lost in thought.
That's the assumption we all make. But look at what happened when it came time to inaugurate the ancient tabernacle. There were 12 tribes, and over 12 days, each tribe brought physical animal sacrifices.
Right.
You would think the great esoteric scholars of Issachar would view the messy, bloody, physical sacrifices as totally beneath their spiritual dignity. But the text points out that Issachar specifically pioneered the schedule.
Really?
Yeah. They actively advised the other tribes on how to bring these offerings, and they themselves eagerly brought their physical sacrifices on the very second day of the month of Nisan.
So their high knowledge didn't pull them away from the physical act, it drove them directly toward it.
Because they understood the physics of the water metaphor. Their immense, towering spiritual scholarship allowed them to see the objective truth, that the physical action, the sacrifice itself, was the entire point of the universe.
The water hitting the dirt.
Exactly. The infinite wisdom was meant to culminate in the physical dirt. Their high knowledge practically demanded immediate physical grounding.
I'm trying to wrap my head around this because I'm wondering, is this just a beautifully poetic metaphor, or is there an actual structural mechanism behind this water physics?
It's structural.
Right, because reading through the sources, the discourse argues that this gravitational pull toward the physical is actually mathematically coded into the Hebrew language itself.
It is deeply structural. The linguistic analysis in this discourse relies on a system called gematria.
Right, so for you listening, when you look at the gematria, which is the mathematical weight and numerical value assigned to every Hebrew letter, the numbers tell a completely different story than just the surface translation.
It reveals the blueprint.
Words with the same numerical value share a fundamental structural essence. And the discourse breaks down the numerical values for our two main subjects: the highest spiritual man, Adam, and the physical animal, which in Hebrew is behemoth.
And the mathematical values reveal the exact mechanism we've been discussing this whole time.
Yeah, the text explains that the spiritual level of Adam has a numerical value of 45. And that number, 45, corresponds directly to a specific transcendent divine name called Ma.
Right.
Meanwhile, the physical animal, behemoth, has a numerical value of 52, which corresponds to a lower, much more structural divine name called Ban.
So to understand the mechanics here, we really have to unpack what Ma and Ban actually do.
Let's do it.
So Ma literally translates to what? It represents a state of boundless potential, infinite divine energy that hasn't yet been restricted into a defined shape. It's the raw, transcendent power. Banan, on the other hand, represents the established, finite, structural reality. It's the energy that actually constructs physical matter. So mathematically, the text is proving that the atom operates with raw, boundless energy, while the animal represents the finite structure of the world.
Okay, so the atom is the boundless water, and the animal is the finite vessel meant to hold it.
Exactly.
And the discourse goes even deeper into the etymology of the word atom itself to show how this collision happens. The word has a built-in paradox right in its root. On one hand, the root comes from the phrase Idamela Elyon, which means, I will be like the Most High.
It is the ultimate aspiration to reach the highest, most transcendent peaks of divinity.
The upward climb.
Right, the upward climb.
But the exact same word, Adam, also shares a root with the word Adama, which translates simply to dirt or earth, the lowest, most basic, unrefined physical matter. So the very vocabulary word used for the highest spiritual being inherently contains both the highest heaven and the lowest dirt.
Which brings us to perhaps the most important spiritual law of gravity, cited in Hasidic philosophy. The rule states, the higher the source, the lower it falls.
The higher the source, the lower it falls. I was thinking about the actual physics of this when reviewing the notes. Imagine you are holding a dense, heavy object like a bowling ball.
Okay, a bowling ball.
If you stand on a small step stool and drop that bowling ball into a sandbox, it makes a tiny crater. It disturbs the surface sand a little bit.
Sure.
But if you take that exact same bowling ball, carry it to the roof of a 100-story skyscraper, and drop it into that same sandbox, the kinetic energy is massive. It will penetrate incredibly deep into the earth, creating a massive crater.
That is the exact mechanism. The text is revealing that the absolute lowest, most dense, most stubborn aspects of our physical reality, the Adama, the dirt, the animal, the everyday chores, they are so incredibly far removed from the divine light that a normal, moderate level of spirituality simply lacks the kinetic energy to reach them.
It just doesn't hit hard enough?
Exactly. The only energy powerful enough to penetrate that deep into the physical dirt and elevate it is an energy that originates from the absolute, highest, most transcendent divine essence. You need the 100-story drop to make the crater.
So the highest light is fundamentally required to deal with the lowest dark. It's the only thing with enough momentum to reach the bottom.
Right.
But logically, that creates a massive problem. Like, If this immense skyscraper-level, boundless maw energy is plummeting down into our physical reality like a falling bowling ball, how does a human being actually catch it?
That is the million-dollar question.
I really struggled with this part of the notes. How do you channel that kind of infinite power without just being completely shattered by your own ego?
That is the pivotal challenge of the entire system.
Mm.
And to answer it, the discourse zooms in on a microscopic visual detail from the handwritten Torah scrolls themselves.
And for you listening, if you've never seen a traditional handwritten parchment Torah scroll up close, the calligraphy is meticulously uniform. Every letter is measured perfectly.
It's very exact.
But in the very first word of Leviticus, that word we talked about earlier, Vayikra, the intimate call of endearment to Moses, there is a bizarre visual anomaly. The last letter of the word is an Aleph. But Jewish tradition dictates that this specific Aleph must always be written as an Aleph Zera.
A miniature letter.
Yeah, a deliberately small Aleph.
Visually, it disrupts the entire line of text. But mystically, it is the secret to surviving the drop. The discourse explains that this miniature Aleph represents the ultimate humility of Moses, the man who is receiving this incredibly high divine call.
I genuinely stumbled over this concept. Moses is arguably the greatest prophet in human history. He split the sea, he pulled an entire nation out of slavery, he spoke to the divine face to face.
His resume is unmatched.
Seriously, how do you possess that much raw, world-altering power and still write yourself into the text with a tiny, humble Aleph? It feels almost like false modesty, you know? How can someone that great actually be humble without lying to themselves?
It feels like a contradiction because we often misunderstand what humility actually is. We think humility means believing you are worthless or downplaying your strengths.
Right.
But in the context of this discourse, Moses' humility, his small Aleph, wasn't about low self-esteem. It was about absolute transparency. He was perfectly, objectively aware of his towering spiritual height and his incredible abilities.
He knew he was the guy.
He knew it, but he realized that his height wasn't about him. It was simply the high ground necessary for the water of divine wisdom to flow down into the world.
I kept coming back to the idea of an Olympic weightlifter. So imagine an Olympic gold medalist walking into a standard neighborhood commercial gym.
Okay.
They know, objectively, as a mathematical fact, that they are the strongest person in the building. Denying it would be absurd, but they have zero arrogance about it. Why? Because they view their incredible strength not as a status symbol to inflate their ego, but entirely as a functional tool, a responsibility used to help others carry their burdens.
That's a great way to put it.
They are immensely strong, but they are completely egoless.
That transparency is the key. Ego acts as a dam. It is a solid wall that blocks the water of divine wisdom from flowing all the way down to the lowest point. And the text brilliantly connects this mechanism of humility to the concept of halacha.
Right, which is the system of practical Jewish law.
Right.
Halacha literally translates to the way to walk.
Exactly.
It is the nitty-gritty daily practical stuff. It dictates what you can eat, how you tie your shoes, how you conduct a business transaction.
It's the everyday dirt. Halacha represents the absolute lowest, most physical, most practical manifestation of Torah wisdom. It is the water finally pooling at the lowest possible point in the dirt.
Wow.
But the discourse points out an amazing historical fact about how halacha was decided. During the Talmudic era, there were two great academies constantly debating the law, the House of Shammai and the House of Hillel.
Right.
The scholars of Shammai were incredibly sharp, brilliant minds. Yet the final practical law, the halacha, was almost always established according to the rulings of the House of Hillel.
Why? The text notes it was because the scholars of Hillel were humble and yielding.
Yes, but look at the mechanism of that humility. They were so yielding that they would actually study and teach their opponent's arguments before their own.
Oh, wow, that's intense.
By actively removing their own ego from the equation, they removed the dam. Their humility allowed the absolute highest, most objective divine reality to flow directly through them and settle into their practical legal rulings. To reach the true practical halacha, that lowest physical point, you need absolute shiflut, ultimate humility.
So Moses' small Aleph wasn't false modesty at all. It was the required physics to do his job.
Exactly.
He had to be the ultimate towering skyscraper to pull the energy down, but he had to be a perfectly clear, ego-less channel so that the bowling ball didn't just destroy him on impact. He pulled the absolute highest essence of Vayikra, that intimate, infinite divine call, all the way down into the gritty physical world of animal sacrifices and daily actions without distorting it.
He was the perfect vessel because he made himself transparent to the light.
This really brings the entire 1972 discourse full circle. We started by walking into what we thought would be a pristine, ethereal, spiritual sanctuary, and we were shocked to find a dirty mop and a bucket.
Yeah, quite the shock.
We had this jarring paradox of the highest spiritual call of Vayikra colliding head-on with the bloody physical reality of animal sacrifices.
And through the text of the Zohar, the Midrash, and the Tanya, we discover that this collision isn't a glitch in the system. It is the entire design.
We learned that true spirituality isn't about escaping the world or floating up a mountain to leave the dirt behind. It's about operating like water. It's about recognizing that the highest, most infinite divine light actively desires to build its home in the lowest, most mundane physical places.
The dirt is the destination.
And we learned that to actually accomplish this, to act as the visionary architect and pull that infinite energy down into the physical bricks of our lives, we need the small Aleph. We need that ultimate transparency and humility to act as a clear channel.
It radically redefines our purpose. Our highest spiritual moments of connection and meditation aren't supposed to be retreats from reality. They are the high-altitude preparation required to engage with physical reality more deeply and effectively.
Which brings us to one final, deeply provocative thought from the source material. As we wrap up this deep dive, there is one crucial detail in the text we haven't mentioned yet.
Right, the spark.
The discourse states explicitly that every single person, and that means you, listener right now, possesses a spark of Moses inside them. You contain that small Aleph. You inherently possess that highest atom-level spiritual capacity.
The structural ability to pull the infinite down into the mundane isn't reserved for ancient prophets. It is literally wired into your spiritual anatomy.
Exactly. The kinetic energy is already yours to use. So I want to leave you with this thought to mull over as you go about your day. If the physics of the universe dictates that your most ordinary, gritty, physical tasks are actually the ultimate intended destination for infinite divine wisdom, what mundane chore, what frustrating interaction, what ordinary item on your to-do list today is secretly your highest spiritual calling, just waiting for you to elevate it?
It fundamentally changes how you look at the dirt.
It really does. Sometimes the ultimate spiritual experience isn't meditating on a mountaintop. Sometimes the most divine thing you can do is just pick up the mop. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us. We'll catch you next time.